Welcome, everyone. We are so excited and so thankful for you to join us today. We know that we are going to be learning a great deal here from our host, Kevin Gadd. Kevin is the Ohio State Director of Apprenti. Am I pronouncing that correctly, Kevin?
Apprenti, but that'll work.
Apprenti. Thank you.
I've heard
A
of both ways,
national nonprofit that helps veterans, people of color, and women get into technology careers through registered apprenticeships. Prior to joining Apprenti, Kevin was CEO and co-founder of Venture Highway, an online entrepreneurship education company. He also served as commercialization director for Tech Columbus, specializing in IT-based companies in the region. He has co-founded, funded, and mentored several technology-based companies and taught entrepreneurship at the Ohio State University, Columbus, at OSU, Columbus College of Art and Design, and at Dar Al Khema in Saudi Arabia. Thank you. And we are just so thrilled to have him here. I've had the pleasure of knowing Kevin for a while, as he has been so dedicated to bringing entrepreneurship to Ohio Wesleyan and to our students here, and then to build into the larger community of entrepreneurs. We have some great guests here.
Okay?
We have some great guests here with us, Kevin, several who are members of the Entrepreneurship Center, and others who are very, very involved in the entrepreneurial ecosystem within Delaware and kind of the greater Central Ohio area. And I know that we are really excited to hear some of your practical advice on bootstrapping. This is such a great topic, so important for all of us to understand what it even means and how to implement this. So we are so excited to have you with us, and I'm going to just turn it right over to you.
Cool. Well, thank you. Yeah, we've known each other for, I don't know, 5-7 years, probably, maybe, I don't know. So I definitely appreciate, being a part of the entrepreneurial center there and Ohio Wesleyan. And I don't live too far from Delaware, so I go there quite often. I was there yesterday. So love for us to be in person, but we can't. So yeah, I'm hopeful that during this that I'm going to ask some questions. I hope that other people ask questions of me. Certainly, I would not consider myself an expert in this. I don't know anybody that would. But I have a few things that I think would be helpful for folks if they're thinking about this path. So Megan did a good job kind of outlining me. I'll fill in a couple of the blanks. Yes, so I've taken venture capital money for my last business. I've done a couple startups with angel investments, and then bootstrapped a couple others as well. I was a commercialization director at Tech Columbus, now Rev 1. And, I started there when the first very big pot of money came. So hundreds of ideas came through us at the time. My focus was on the IT side, hardware, software, and websites. So I spent a lot of time telling people that I wasn't going to give them money, so they had to figure out how to bootstrap. And so yes, I've written, my last business was an entrepreneurship platform. So I wrote several of the textbooks with some professors at Ohio State, and we taught that. We taught that at Fisher College. CCAD helped start the program there, the entrepreneurship program there at CCAD. And then yes, Dar Al Khema, which was is a private women's college in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. So one of the best experiences of my life, helping them get that program up and running. And I taught 5 classes there over about a year and a half. So at a time when women were just getting some rights over there. So it was a magical experience for sure. I am a retired chief. So if you look for me on Twitter or anything, I am Chief Gadd. I spent 23 years in the active duty and Guard Air Force. So it's a really big part of my life. I did 17 years of that as tech. And the interesting thing that Megan didn't know when she asked me to do this is that I actually am a co-founder of the International Bootstrapping Association, which no longer exists. But while I was at Tech Columbus, again, a lot of people were coming through, and we only had so much money, and I tell a lot of people that they weren't going to get funded. So we spent a lot of time talking to people about bootstrapping. So a couple partners and I decided to put that together, and it was a monthly meeting to talk to folks about bootstrapping and to try to get them to think along those lines, because at the time there was a lot of interest in raising money, and that's not the only way to do it. So again, I have a ton of experience in this world, but I'm always looking to learn more. So let's start with what is and what is not bootstrapping, because there's several different definitions. Several people think of it different ways. I think kind of a traditional one is building a company from the ground up with, no outside money, right? So it's personal savings, get some, early adopters to buy your product, use that money to continue investing back in, maybe get a couple, loans. That's kind of the way, that's kind of the traditional definition, I think. At IBA, when we wrote that definition, we said it was the art of overcoming business challenges with creativity and perseverance. Because it really was that. I mean, it's really more of a mindset rather than, do I raise money or not, right? Because that's simple to say, I didn't raise any money, so I'm a bootstrapper. But you can also carry some of these strategies, even if you did raise money. You could definitely learn a lot from these, and I did in the company where I raised $1 million for the last company. We just had to be cheap, even we had money, but we still had to be very cheap and try to grow with revenue. Again, I think loans are cool, but venture capital is not. So if you want to call yourself a bootstrapper and you take venture capital money, I think you've kind of lost that battle. Typically, it's that cash versus equity, right? If you're selling off equity to grow, I kind of say not really following the traditional definition of that. Again, learn some things though, do some things with that. Does anybody know what the 3 F's are? Anybody out there can you want to speak? We talk about this all the time. You got friends, family, and fools are the 3 F's that you want to try to raise money from initially. And oftentimes they're all 3 at one time. But that's where you're typically going to get some of your early initial investment from: friends, family, and fools who just believe in you and just throw money at you, right? So that's a good way to get started. I would definitely also say that did something pop up here? No. Okay. Sometimes it pops up just so you know, like if somebody has a question and they put it in the chat, Megan, if you see it and I don't, just help me, I guess. That would be appreciated.
You got it.
I also want to say, and I just tell people, it's not a badge of courage you can't lay down, right? If somebody comes and offers you a ton of money for a small portion of your company, you probably should do it, right? So it's not a badge of courage that you have to just hold on to forever. It is a choice, right? I know plenty of people that got to a certain, that got offers for investment. I mean, just watch, Shark Tank, right? Plenty of people choose not to take that money because, and I hate that show, because it's made for TV drama. But investors try to get a large percentage of your company for a small amount of investment. That's their job. And so you can choose not to do that. But if you do desire to grow really big, then bootstrapping is the best way, I do believe. Because if you want to turn that table, if you want to get more money for giving away less equity, you need to have proven stuff. You need to have some reason, some validation as to why I built this business, and I do need your money to grow, but I don't need it that bad. I don't need it that bad that I'm going to sacrifice that amount of equity in the business. I've been doing fine. I'm going to keep growing it. So it's really a decision that you want to make, right? This was really a big thing, especially when I was at Tech Columbus, is that, this is in, mid 2000s up to, 2010, so much press about money being raised and so much, so many crazy valuations. And, I had so many people come in and say, well, if I had this idea in Silicon Valley, they'd give me millions of dollars, right? And we'd say, then go, prove it. There's a, I don't know if any of you have been into the courtroom up the street in Delaware, but on the front of the judge's desk or whatever, it says, we don't care how they do it in Franklin County. and I used to use that phrase with some of the folks coming to me. I don't care how they do it in Silicon Valley, right? We have a different way of doing it here. Love it or leave it. Bootstrapping is a much more prominent way to build your businesses here. It's completely different. So think about all of the businesses that you know or interact with that are bootstrapped. I mean, in a day you're gonna interact with a ton more businesses. You think of just consulting or salons or restaurants or any of those things. They're not taking venture capital. They're not taking large investments. They're taking loans and personal loans and putting their money down. You tend to see a lot more, if you really look, you see a lot more businesses that have been bootstrapped, and they're just good businesses. They're not looking for a lot of press. I hope we've got folks on here that are either thinking about doing this or have been doing it, and it's a good way to grow a business. It really is. One of the things that I did when I was at Tech Columbus is I did a presentation called When to Jump, and it was meant for folks that are thinking about it. Like, I want to start a business, because I had plenty of people that had a full-time job, and they would come to me and they would say, "Okay, I've got this business plan, and if I just get some money, I'll quit my job and I'll go start this thing." And so after seeing that, 100 times, I decided to put together a program on it, and we did this several times while I was there. One of the times, my wife actually sat on the panel. We had a couple bootstrap entrepreneurs, and then my wife was she went way out of her comfort zone, and so she was on the panel too, because there's a huge family component to this if you are thinking about jumping into a business and bootstrapping it, right? So just a couple quick things that I would suggest. Always suggest to people, get your personal finances in order. You don't want to start a bootstrap business if your personal finances are not good. It's just going to add a whole lot more stress. Having 6 months of savings put aside would be the optimal thing to do. Get rid of all unnecessary debts or bills. Know your limit. We knew what we had to live on per month, and as long as we had that, then I could do whatever I wanted to over here. We also, committed to a limit that if we started to back away from being okay, what was the limit? And my wife always said she was an equal partner in the thing. She wasn't doing the work, but she was an investor, and so I had to give her updates all the time. I had to communicate and over communicate. If you're not married, get an accountability partner is what we recommended to people. I was often that for people that came to Tech Columbus or that were my students in all the classes I taught. We're the accountability partner. We're the double check on should you spend that money or not. And then boundaries, again, how much can we lose? How much can we afford to invest? How long can we do this? Can we, in my case, my wife had benefits. So when I bootstrapped businesses and I wasn't making any money, we had enough to survive and we had benefits. So those kind of things, want to make sure that, I recommend to folks. Definitely prepare a business plan or an outline or something, have something. Don't just jump and not have a plan, at least something. I will caution that you can spend way too much time building business plans. I'm not a huge fan of business plans. I've taught the business plan class hundreds of times. I've read hundreds of business plans. I've written several. We've moved nowadays to a little bit more of like a lean startup canvas or business model canvas. And so, that's really more what we would do, or strategic plans. I'll talk about a one-page strategic plan in a little bit that I really like and have taught. But know where you're going. Don't just go, I got a great idea. I'm going to quit my job and it'll be great. Even if you have the money in the bank, don't. Make sure you have a plan to where you're going. Again, do as much as you can while you're still employed. Save that money, put it in the bank. I recommend that people get their MVP done and tested if they can. So for those of you who don't know, that's a minimally viable product, and an MVP should be minimal and it should be viable. which sometimes doesn't happen, but it should be those two so that you get real good feedback as part of the lean startup process, where you're building something, letting people touch it, measuring their reactions, learning what you've got, how they're reacting, and then rebuild, measure, learn, kind of thing. And the last thing that I would recommend to people is toughen up and learn to sell. Admittedly, I'm pretty good at the toughen up part, not the greatest at the sell part. So, you just got to find what you're good at. I had to help supplement some of that with other people. So, but if you're ready to jump and you've done these things and you have a plan, I've got a couple recommendations. I've got some things to think about. Again, if anybody wants to chime in, please do. Can they talk? Can people talk, Megan? Or are they on mute? I want them to be on mute.
Everybody is on mute, but they have the power to unmute.
Okay, good. That's good to tell everyone. You have the power to unmute. And if you're like, hey, I have a question, just jump right in. And I'm pretty laid back, same way I taught classes for years. I want interaction. It's really hard to just look at this little box and not get much feedback, right? That's the challenge of COVID times, but I hope you're getting something and I hope you feel comfortable unmuting yourself. In a bootstrap business, cash is king, right? Cash is king because they're not making, it's hard to make more of it, and you're not getting any more in a large chunk of an investment type thing. Very simple model: accelerate your cash in, decelerate your cash out. Sounds easier than maybe it is, but there's a couple ways that you can do that. I'd love to see if someone has some suggestions. Does anybody know what net 30, 2% net 10 is? Nobody?
Seeing a lot of people shake their head no.
Okay, good. I can't see everyone, but so what that means is that when you send out an invoice to one of your customers, you're going to want them to be net 30, but you might give them a 2% off if they pay within 10 days. So you might give them a discount and say, a 2% discount doesn't seem like a lot, but it makes them feel like, oh, I'm saving money. Like if I can send the check today, I'm saving money. I'm into that. And that's good for you. That's cash in faster than maybe normally it would. On the other side, cash out, ask for net 60 at least, right? From your vendors that are, maybe folks that you're buying stuff from to produce your product. If you can get net 60 paying and net 30 or net 10 in, you can run that loop, as long as you have the right, amount of equipment or whatever you're selling. But that's a good loop to have with faster cash in, slower cash out.
Kevin, can I ask you a quick question here?
Please
Seems
do.
like the psychology comes into play a little bit with that 2%, where they feel like they're saving. And even though 2% really is not a lot, it feels good. And I have to imagine that then also creates some loyalty between that customer and you. Have you found that to be true? Does that build some connection, or there's a lot of psychology that goes into business. And I think this might come into play with kind of the feel good of the savings.
100%. Yep. 100%. Yep. One thing I always also recommend, especially in the early stages of a bootstrap startup, is get to know the person that's going to be paying the bill. Have a connection to that person. It's a human. It's not a mindless black abyss that you're hoping the check pops out of, right? It's a human, and I think that helps too, right? A good relationship with that person, whether it's via email or a good trick is just to call up and like, hey, this is Kevin from Venture Highway, and I was going to talk to the accounts payable department about my invoice. I've got, an offer for you. And then you actually get to the person whose responsibility that is, and you can create a relationship with that person. Yeah, because you're going to need that. I'll talk about that in a bit, but especially early adopters. Early adopters, love them. And but by nature of them being an early adopter, they're adopting your product before it's really rock solid, and oftentimes. And so those early adopters tend to roll. You're going to lose them at some point. Is a pretty solid thing. Better relationships mean you hold them longer as your product has bumps, and your business has bumps, and those things will happen to a new business. You want that relationship. So yeah, the 2% is just is a kitschy way to kind of make that relationship better. So it's calling in, those kind of things. I do think it's valuable, though, 100% valuable. You do stuff like selling bulk, sell related services, just anything to get cash in. We were selling a product, but then I was also doing teaching or other consulting services type stuff that would bring revenue in while the product was getting better and more people were adopting the platform. Decelerating cash out, a lot of that is on people. I think often you're deferring compensation to people. You are giving them a little bit of equity for sweat equity, right? Salespeople, a lot of people that I have known get someone to help them sell, who maybe has another job or a job in the same industry, and they're kind of on the side selling for you, and then it's just pay for performance. Sell something, you get a percentage of that sale to help you at least get off the ground and not have to go out and pay 6 figures for a salesperson, right? A lot of people, and this is a challenge, right? A lot of people do 1099s as opposed to W-2 employees. You're going to save benefits. You're going to do a lot of stuff. Be very careful with that. That is, that's a snake, and sometimes when you play with snakes, you get bit. Is what I always tell people, because there are rules. If you start to treat a 1099 employee like a W-2 employee, you've crossed that line, and that's illegal, right? So you can't do that. Only buy what you need, no matter what the deal is. I can get 1,000 pins with my logo on them. Well, you only need 100. I admit, like our company that I work for now, I've got I got a box of pins below me here. We had to buy 1 million to get the better per price. But then of course the plague hit, and so I'm not giving out any pins. But it's those kind of things. Parts of your product that you're buying and getting in, even if there's a super deal, just buy what you need. Your deals are less important than cash flow. Cash flow is king, right? You've got to watch that, and get as much free or cheap stuff as possible. That should be like bootstrapping 101, right? Don't go buy furniture. Don't pay for consultants or other services that you just don't need, or that that focused CFO that is a great dude, but you don't need that, right? You don't need that right often. Do the best you can. You don't need brand new furniture. You can get IKEA. I read about one company recently that when they were starting and they were in the bootstrap mode, they were growing. Every new employee had, I don't know, $500 or whatever it was. And so Megan's my new employee. I say, here, Megan, here's $500. Go to IKEA or Costco. Get your desk, get your chair, get your computer. Maybe it was $1,000, whatever, and then come back and then you put it together, and that helped cement that mindset in all the employees that we have to do this cheaply. Like, we don't have a lot of money, and so I thought it was kind of an interesting way to do that. I'm sure if you didn't know how to put it together, Megan, I would help you, but but the idea I thought was really cool to say, it's just not the person who owns it that has to be pinching pennies here. We're doing this because we could just buy something and have it sent in and pay 4 times as much, but we're not. We're all in this together, trying to save money. So I think that was super important. Customer cash is queen. Cash itself is king, I guess. Customer cash is queen, right? Because you're really trying to use customer your revenue to build the business, right? And a couple of things to remember in that. We say that customer cash is market truth, meaning if people are buying, then you've got a product. if customers aren't buying and you're not getting cash for that, then you've got a problem, either in marketing or how you sell it or the product itself, or your value proposition is not strong enough, something like that. But if people are buying, that's the market telling you something good. It's low cost cash, right? No interest. I don't have to send a report to the bank if I don't have, I don't have to send a report to my angel investors, even if it's one of the 3 Fs, right? I still have, even if I have 3 Fs, I still need to keep and tell them, like, what are you doing this month? And they have every right to ask me a ton of questions. Customer cash is low cost, low effort, cash, and it's efficient. So you can do that, net 10 and net 60, right? So it's efficient, goes straight in the bank. It's right there for you to use. And again, I think this is often an overlooked piece of startups, and especially bootstrapped ones, and that is early adopters. Eventually, they just get tired. They've been with you through the trenches while you're figuring it out, and while you've added features, and okay, there was bugs, and you've got them fixed. But eventually, that kind of wears thin. Somebody else comes in, tries to sell it, or they figure out how to do a way to do it better. Not always, obviously, but it is a challenge. And so, you try to really, really focus on serving those early adopters, so that you can get to that more of a fatter part of that adoption curve, where you've got a lot more people coming, and your product is more stable, and but early adopters are valuable, but sometimes they just run out of patience, I guess. Okay, so I just put like 2 pages of lessons that I'm gonna go through, and if you have a question, ask it. I'll tell a little story, but I mean, there's a million lessons or suggestions that you could give somebody building a business. Be ready to jump. That is one very important one. I've made that number 1 because I have known a ton of people who just got super excited, or they got laid off, right? They got laid off and like, I got to build a business. So they went and did it, but they weren't prepared to do it. And that, again, like we said earlier, it's not just the cash part, it's the emotional part, it's the family part, it's the strategy part, those kind of things. At least have something. And I like the bootstrap model better. It's maybe a little more painful, but I like it better than a venture capital model, because everything is important. Every customer, every time you talk to somebody, every dollar, every meeting, every decision, you're like, holy smokes, is this going to work or not? It's just critically important, and you feel the weight of that in your gut often early on, right? About how important everyone is. You cannot overlook, anything, right? I hope folks have heard of Lean Startup, or if not, please go look up Lean Startup, and this idea of a minimally viable product. But the challenge we had, frankly, prior to this kind of epiphany of lean and minimally viable products, is that we had a ton of people that would go build their product, go, sneak away in their lab and build their product, and then, have the big reveal moment, and show it to the world. And if there were challenges, or the customers were like, what is that? Like, I don't even know what that is, or I don't need that. It's too late at that point. And so the concept of Lean Startup is just that continual. There's a lot to it, but the continual build, measure, learn in very small increments with a lot of good feedback. It kind of keeps you on that path of figuring out exactly what the value proposition is and what do the customers want. Much more important in a bootstrapped environment, because again, every second is important. I think there's a.
All right, so I'll read this. This is from Allie. How do you suggest
Okay,
businesses?
good. Thank you.
Yeah, how do you suggest businesses restrap their business during the pandemic? This can include reopening and after flooding in May, so the major flooding in Delaware. How do you suggest about going back, like starting the cycle again?
That is a great question. I don't think it's anything different than what we're going through here. It's back to focusing on cash. It is focusing on every customer, every contact, every dollar is important, right? I mean, I was at Opa's last night. I was at Cohatch last night, and there's, those folks are focusing on making sure that you're cared about and you should come back. And every customer, every contact, every dollar is important. So I don't know. I get as much free stuff as you can, right? I certainly applaud free, but I applaud the fund in Delaware that's helping the businesses and PPP. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how. I'm sure there's other ways, but it's got to be really hard to do that from a retail perspective. I've never had a retail business, so it's always kind of been online or virtual or technology. But good question. If somebody else has a great idea, please let me know. But I would say go back to these things. Because I don't know if it's a personal question you're asking, but I would guess in a lot of those cases, business has gone on for a while. It's going on for a while. You're starting to get a little sloppy with things like this because you have some cash and you have customers and things are going fairly well, right? But when you get slammed back against this wall, I think it's a time when you just retrench and you go, okay, I've got to focus on my customers. I've got to focus on the way cash is coming in. I'm getting these loans, so they're there, and if I don't have to hold them, if I don't have to use them, then that's awesome. But yeah, good question. I feel for you, and I did my best to help Opus.
Thank you, and I appreciate it. I'm just a big downtown Delaware supporter, so but
yeah.
I think they're doing a great job. But I was just
yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I'm good friends with Sean and Sean Hughes, and I know he's works his tail off to help people up there, and it's awesome. So yeah.
He's been a good boost to downtown.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I went to see him last night and he wasn't in the office, so I'll stick with him. But so anyhow, again, so great question. Thank you. Spend money that directly relates to customer acquisition. There's a lot of things, especially when you start a business. The one thing I noticed is, your name and your email gets everywhere. And there's tons of people willing to sell you all kinds of stuff that sounds really good and sounds really important. Usually it's marketing related, right? But you've got to kind of hold fast to that customer acquisition as the focus, especially early on. You don't have a lot of money, you don't have a lot of customers. You got to figure out how to run that, right? Know where every single dollar is coming from and going to. And early on, I was in some bootstrap businesses, and I was on the operations side, and I found out later that there were some unseedy kind of things going on in the finances of one of the businesses that I was co-founder on. And I said, never again will I not know what's going on. And so, I went and got my MBA and focused on the finance stuff. And then every business after that, I've done the finances, right? If we get to a point where it's big enough and I can outsource it, like I outsourced some of the things, but day to day, every dollar in, every dollar out, I knew exactly what it was. Every Saturday morning, I would sit down, for 2-3 hours and take care of finances. Not fun, but I knew, where we were at the checkbook at any given moment. So again, it's kind of a drag, but it's, you can do QuickBooks. It's not that hard, right? At some point, it overwhelms you, 100%. Good problem to have, right? But until you have that problem, there's no sense in outsourcing that stuff, not at all. One thing I thought that was very interesting that I read, I didn't ever do this when we had conversations about it, but keep a record of all the money you did not spend. We could have, we thought about, that contract with that marketing firm. It sounded great and it helped other people like us, but we decided to do it on our own. We saved $10,000, or, we were going to get this set of furniture for the office, but we went with used and it's a little ugly, but, we saved $5,000. Now you start to put that tally up in your office as your little business starts to grow. I think that's a good visual sign for everyone. Again, we're all trying to save money, and you can add to that tally as much as I can add to that tally of money that we're saving. Focus on selling to customers, not investors, right? That should be the thing. I had so many people that they didn't even think about the customers. They just wanted to pitch their business to investors. I'm like, dude, you got to get customers, or you at least got to prove something out that an investor would say, oh, okay, that's worth taking a chance on. Focus on the customers. We always use, in all of us, we use the underdog concept to our advantage, right? It's us against the world. It's just the three of us. We want to get to 4. We got 5 customers. Let's get to 10. The big company's trying to get us, so we're not going to let that happen. We're scrappy. So it really matters. I have to say, it really matters. Everything's important. You've got to get everyone on the same page of bootstrapping, growth. And then another one is tell your story to everyone. I was, early on in my career, I always found that, interesting. I had a partner, and he was a little more experienced than I was, and I was a junior partner. He was the primary guy, and I was like, doesn't matter who we're talking to. That dude is selling, and he is telling everyone about the business. It could be somebody completely unrelated, and he is telling those stories, man, and with passion and purpose. And I just realized there's a huge value in that. You don't know who that person is going to tell. You don't know what they can do for you or what you can do for them. And you don't know, you can't give someone less because you don't think they're going to do something for you. And you should be the same pitch every time if you're on it. And it works. It really does. It's hard. It's a thing that you want to practice. For sure.
So we have another question here asking if that is when social media can help to tell the story, how you can communicate it out.
100%. We started our first tech business in '95, I think it was. So went a lot at that time, and over the years, it's gotten more and more. Remember there was the big boom where everybody was a social media expert, and just pay me, I'll get you clicks, and there was that giant boom. And I think it's mellowed at this point that you can do it yourself. You don't need, it takes thought, and I am getting better at it. For those of you that know me on LinkedIn or Facebook, right? I'm getting better at it, but it's definitely a skill but that's great. I mean, again, you never know who's going to see that and go, oh, you should check this thing out, and send it to somebody they know. And it's free, which is the great part of it. Again, the downside, right, is just a lot of noise. It's hard to break through that noise. So yeah. Was there another one that popped up too, Megan? Okay, cool.
Nope, it was just a confirmation.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much. It blinks and then it goes away. This is my last page, and then again, if we want to talk or have questions. But one thing that we always said there is always another way. Always. It's not just throw money at the problem. I have a really good friend who's got a lot of disposable income, and so whenever we kind of come up to an issue, he just throws money at it. Like, I'm not dealing with this. He just throws money at it. Right? I'm like, I could do that, with a little less money and a little more time. And I think that probably comes from my bootstrapping experience. But there's always another way. It's never just you got to pay this, and the only way to make it through this thing is to pay this thing. There's always another way. And if you think that way, it'll drive you to go look for another way, a cheaper way. Again, it's return on investment, it's give and take. You might not get the exact same results if you use the super expensive marketing people as opposed to doing it yourself. But again, that cash flow, that's the king, right? That's the most important thing. Always be looking for that. Nobody wants to sit on old junky chairs and I've used used computers so many times over the years. They work, they're fine. I read a story about like this company that was just starting to grow, and now it had 5 or 10 people in the company. They bought one printer and they put it on like one of those little dollies, and so if you needed the printer, you'd say, hey, I need the printer, and they would wheel the printer over to you. You'd plug it up, you do the print. The next person would go, hey, I need the printer. over and plug it in. They could have bought 5 printers, right? Or they could have bought a super expensive one to just sit over in the corner. But they bought a functional, inexpensive one and they just pushed the thing around a little bit. It's not a long-term sustainable model, but if you're in that really early growth stage where you're trying to save money and trying to grow the business, little things like that, save money. And to be honest with you, they make great stories down the road. When the companies are successful and you have a whole bunch of people, you go, man, you weren't here when we only had one printer. Like when we had to push the printer, you missed all that, right? And they make great stories for new employees to go, all right, this is a scrappy company. Let's get it on. Let's fight with these guys. So I think you're always thinking that there's another way. Hire the right people at the right time may sound, again, very simple, but do the job yourself. I'm a huge proponent of, as I'm cheap again, but is do the job yourself until you can't do it any longer. And then you hire somebody, right? That's accounting, that's building the product, that's selling, that's whatever it is. I try to hold on to it as long as I can before I start spending money and throwing money at the problem and hiring people, right? But salespeople, that should be early on, like a pro salesperson early on. And as things go, double down, hire a more expensive, better one if you have to, or hire 2, but doubling down on sales. Because again, once you start to get that momentum and get moving forward, you need to accelerate that. And again, you can outsource some of the tech in the businesses that I tend to deal with, as opposed to hiring the expensive tech person. You can still outsource some of that stuff to the product, but you need to sell. And you can sell before you have something completely done is another classic bootstrapper move. Sell on the vision. You're selling the vision of what this thing will be, even if you can't really meet that need right this second. What do you think befriend people with a loudspeaker means, Megan?
I would say it's become friends with people who are influencers, who have lots of social media followers. So how I usually say this, because I talk a lot about this in the career world and then at the entrepreneurial center, is that you have to be a sneezer. So keep in mind, I came up with this, or I thought about this before the pandemic, because now it's just simply gross. But if you think about it, it's the same concept of why we wear masks now, that when you're trying to share what you're doing and trying to engage other people, you need people who are sneezers, who will spread what you're doing. And so it's the same type of thing with a loudspeaker, a megaphone. Who's going to be on the top of the mountain kind of carrying the flag for you and getting it out to people? So loudspeaker is definitely much more clean and pandemic friendly than sneezer, but the same type of concept.
Yep, absolutely. Or, a megaphone, really. I remember early on, I was in a situation where I was in a startup that raised a ton of money, over $300 million. And so we had a lot of press and a lot of things. And so, I am still, I'm still in contact with like people at Business First that were there, like Carrie Ghost, who wrote a lot about us then. And then over the years, as I've done things, she'll pop stuff in. People in those kind of environments, a little story about you in the business first goes a long way, right? You can now once you got that, now you're really telling people, look, they put me in the paper. But again, influencers, right? People that can tell other people good things about you. You've got to. I always look for the one. Another way to say this: one to many. Who's the one to many? Who's like I could tell you, but you've got a demographic, a population, a following, or whatever. Who are those people? And if you go back to that one about talk to everyone about what you do with passion and purpose, you're going to find those. They're going to go, man, that guy was. I'm not sure if he can do it, but man, that guy was passionate about what he's doing. This is the problem he's trying to solve. maybe you have this problem, so that's always been very, very helpful for a lot of things I've done, including what I do now, right? It definitely is very important. And it's cool now because having done it for a long time, I know a lot of loudspeakers and, I am the same, right? I try to help people as well. So one of the things I also think that people forget about is creating good habits. In one of my businesses, my partner did not create good habits. He created a habit of vodka, and that was not a good habit. And the pressure and the stress got to him one time, drank too much and had some issues with that. And that really rocked the business. You've got to have those physical and mental health. Don't stop going to the gym. Maybe you run a little bit less, but you still got to do that. Don't neglect your health. It's not that big a deal. I shouldn't say that. The business is a big deal, but it's not a big enough deal to lose your life, lose your marriage, lose your house, lose your friends, whatever. That's not the long-term thing. So create a good habit of that. A habit of strategy, like have a habit of strategy. Every 3 months we did a one-page strategy document. So we did, a long-term, and then every, a very important thing I think in these businesses is that 5-year strategic plans are stupid. 5-year business plans are stupid. There's no one that knows that stuff. You're in a startup business. You're doing 3-month chunks. Like you have a vision of a year out, maybe 3 years out. Great. But you're really day to day, everything is so important that, we look at doing those 3-month chunks. So you're moving down the path.
Hey, Kevin.
Family. Yeah.
So Amy just said, thank you for saying that about the 5-year projection. I know that I've even talked to students that they are often even asked as a first-year student, think 5 years from now, what do you want to do? And for them, it's like, well, I just got onto campus. So I know it's a slightly different concept, but it's the same, that we really have to think in smaller chunks. Allie was just mentioning, like, look at starting up in January of this year, how your 5-year plan probably really went down the toilet,
Oh,
so
no.
yeah, looking at those 3-month chunks makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying don't think about what's out there, but I'm sure you've all heard the analysis paralysis thing. Like if you've got to sit and like, oh my God, I got to write a business plan that shows how I'm going to grow in the next 5 years with the giant spreadsheet of exactly how the business is going to grow. All of it's BS, right? All of it's a waste of time. I want to know what you're going to do the next 3 to 6 months. Like, how are you going to get on that path? Spend, of an hour, spend 10 minutes on, way down, and spend 45 minutes on, the next year. And then 5 minutes to take a break. But, it's really important. One of the things, so I also have some books here. And that kind of leads me to this one. Big fan of this book. And this is a 1-page, very simple strategic planning program. For my last couple businesses, we did this. You print out a 1-page, and everybody gets a copy, and everybody sees. So when I have to sit there, when one of my employees has to sit there and make a decision because their time is limited, everything's coming at them. I want them to know what's important. If you got to choose between doing A and doing B, I want you to know what's important. You choose the one that's important, and it should be on that piece of paper that's right on the wall, right there, that we updated and we went through together. So very simple book, very simple process. I've seen a lot of companies really grow fast with this. It's certainly helped me in my businesses as well. The venture capital firm that I was funded by, NCT Ventures in Columbus, this was a requirement. You had to supply this to them. Every portfolio company had to supply it to them. So that's a good book right there. I keep it here, on my bookshelf. I recommend this book too. Although this is a modified version of The Art of War. This is Art of War for Executives. Again, I'm a military guy. I get it. But there's some great concepts in here that apply to business, right? It's not all about war. Because it really starting a business is an awful lot like a skirmish. It's an awful lot like a war because everyone's trying to stop you. It seems like you got so many hills, you're fighting so many battles. This is just one of those, kind of like I went through, and go through and highlight the things that are relative to business, so that's a great book too. I always recommend The Lean Startup. I don't have it here on my bookshelf. I have it at home. But this book here, I don't even know if it's in print anymore, but this Entrepreneur's Guide to Customer Development is kind of the pre-book to the Lean Startup. This was written as a kind of a cheat sheet to the 4 Steps of the Epiphany, which was the book that led to Lean Startup. So a lot of great, very short stuff. How to do your MVP, what's that process? So a lot of really great information in here. We taught this book many times at Ohio State. And then this book, I don't even think is in print anymore either, but it's just, bootstrapping. This is an older book, but, it's just chock full of ideas and examples and, suggestions, just it. Never stop learning. I didn't put that on there, but I think that should be everyone's motto. It certainly is mine. But never stop learning, and things like this, you just go, oh, that's a great idea. I never thought about getting a printer and putting it on the trolley, or or whatever. So those are some good books that I highly recommend. I'm sure there's others that I forgot, but that's all I have. That went a little longer than I thought. I'm sorry, but thank you for playing along, Megan, and our other. Amy asked a question too. So, what did you learn? What did I miss? what should we try? I'm fine to stay as long as you want to talk, but what did I miss?
That was helpful. That was very helpful, extremely helpful. So I have a small business. We've been in business for a couple of years, but I would say I'm just making the first full turn on a year of real customers and real activity. And I've bootstrapped the whole thing. I'm always
What's your business?
It's called My Bookworm Box. It's a kids book club, kind of like an online library, but we mail books, they read them and send them back to get their next box.
Very cool.
Yeah, so it's unique. There's nobody really doing anything like it. But you're right. I'm always seeing in business first, so-and-so raised capital and this company raised capital. But I think I'm just going to continue. I have a second job, or actually, I don't know which is my first and which is my second job. Maybe they're both side hustles. That's the side hustle. I'm a financial advisor, side hustle, so I can fund my Bookworm Box. But yeah, it all makes sense, and it's a good just confirmation that I think I'm doing the right thing.
Good. I'm sure you are.
Yeah. So.
And there are also plenty of headlines in Business First that talk about great businesses that are growing that didn't take any capital, right? Those, and thank God, thank Ohio Third Frontier, thank, the ecosystem, in this area that we have stories in this area that talk about, great exits, and we had an IPO at Root today, right? Or yesterday. So thank goodness we have those stories, because those are the stories. The value of those stories is to make you want to do it. The value of the stories is to get the students to take that class in college. It is a very, valid thing to see and to put that stuff in the paper. And for somebody who's, been in this for 25 years, 10 so years ago, all we had were Silicon Valley stories. Look what they did out there. Facebook got $40 million today, or whatever it was, and we heard a lot about that. And now we're hearing local stories, and it's emboldening the next generation. So good for you, Amy. I'm glad you. Have you read any of those books? Seen any of those books?
I have not. What have I read? The Founder's Journey. Is that it? I've read a few. I have a few. I need to do Mastering the Rock.
The Founder's Dilemma.
Yeah, the Founder's Dilemma. Yeah, I read that one right away.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Just keep reading it. Just keep learning. You know, I think that, you know, it gets hard. It's a hard path. It's a hard path with 2 jobs and one of them to start up and one of them that you're really passionate about. It's hard. And that's why, you know, again, hard these days because you don't get to get in environments like this. It's always very valuable to go to meetups and go to other things where you can just talk. Like, I just want to talk to another bootstrapping entrepreneur about how hard this freaking thing is. Right. And like, you know, you can't do that, you know, you can't do that often. And right. I used to hate when I was, you know, mentoring and coaching, you know, people that were on this path and you go, how's it going? And they'd be, oh man, it's great. No problem. It's all great. Like, right. Dude, I know it's not great. Like, I'm here to help you. You can tell me the truth.
Right.
Like, you don't get any points for, it's all good. You get points for telling me how I can help you. And then let's work through that process to help you. Right. That's what it's about. You can tell everyone else, tell your wife, tell your friends, tell people at the bar, whatever it is, you can tell them all you want, but somebody you have to tell the truth and just let it come out so that you can at least just get it out of you because it will definitely eat you up, you know. So,
right.
Good luck to you.
Thanks.
Hey, along with that thought, Kevin, we are actually through the Delaware Entrepreneurial Center at Ohio Wesleyan, we're launching something called Enlightened Entrepreneur. And the goal is to have a safe space to share things like that you don't necessarily share with other people. So it'll be other entrepreneurs who are going through different challenges. And it's the time that you can say, I don't know how I'm going to make payroll, or I'm really stressed about X. And we've been hearing from other entrepreneurs that things like that, they don't necessarily want to talk to their significant other about because then it just adds stress, you know, 100%. Or just like you're saying, you need to have that person or that group who can support you through these things and have maybe gone through it. And so then they can add, okay, I totally hear where you're coming from. And this is what I did. So that will actually kick off in January 21st. We are hoping to be able to have it in the center, just some soft seating, have some adult beverages.
That's exactly what we did with that International Bootstrapping Association. Like that was it. That was meant to be that we had like a subject each month that we wanted to kind of focus. So it wasn't just people, you know, complaining or
right.
You know, vomiting all their issues out on the table. We had kind of a thing. So we'd all kind of rally around that. And you could either ask for help or give help, you know, those kind of things. So yeah, that's great.
Thank you.
Megan?
Yeah.
I think that would be awesome. And if you could just maybe do for downtown Delaware too, because January is going to suck.
Yeah. Yeah. Our goal is actually to invite folks who, so not just startups, but just business owners, you know, so because everybody is going to be experiencing some similar things. Thank you so much, Amy. I see you here.
Thank you, Kevin. This was awesome.
It was great to meet you. Yeah, I have to actually go to another presentation.
Okay.
This one I get to listen on, not talk on, but I'll send this to you, Megan, if you want it. If anybody wants a copy of it, and you've got my email. If anybody wants to have a conversation, send me other suggestions. I certainly love talking about this stuff. I'll probably show up at your Enlightened Entrepreneur event. You know, I will help you whatever you need. So
thank you. Well, thank you so much for your time, Kevin, and sharing your expertise. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you again soon. Hopefully soon in person at some point.
Take care, everyone. Hopefully soon.
Thank you.
Enjoy Halloween, Megan.
Thank you. Bye.